Hello and welcome to this event, Scaling Your Product During Fast Growth. We are super excited to see everyone here. We moved into this office mid-COVID, so this is the first time we're able to host an event in our office, making us very happy.
And then I just want to say a big thanks to our co-hosts, ProductTank and ProductTank, and they will do a short icebreaker with you. So Leo and Frederick, do you want to join the stage?
Yes.
Hello, so I'm Frederick.
And I'm Leo.
And we are the icebreaker. If we go to the next slide. Yes. So Leo and I are representing a community called ProductTank which we started actually during the pandemic in February, where we saw a need for people who are interested in products to actually come and discuss products, ask each other questions, bear with each other, pass on great articles or books, whatever it could be. And now it has actually been growing quite a lot. We are almost 300, 292. So if we have 8 people in here who want to join tonight, then we are at 300. You're more than welcome to join. A couple of words on what is it we do and what is it we can offer. With these 292 people, there will of course be a lot of brain trust and a lot of people with experience in products. But I would say all of them are also very curious people. So no one has the answer in here. You can leave comments, but you can also ask questions if you want. And there's some heavy debates going on where people really try to help you with whatever challenge you have. So I really encourage you to come in and jump onto the wagon and also help us develop it even further because this is just our first version.
Yes, thank you. I think we're doing this voluntarily, both me and Frederick. So you can also join us if you want to be a volunteer. So please let us know in the forum. We have also tried to understand what do successful product managers need and want to learn as being part of our community. And we ran a quick survey. And this is actually what people have responded. And what we want to do is we want you to have a conversation with the people next to you around these 3 topics. So the first one, I'll read it up for those who can't see. PM coaching for me, which is people want to understand how you can be a better product manager. Secondly, product training for my colleagues, which is, of course, if you have a team, it's very important to have someone who actually understands and you speak the same language. And thirdly, product training for my management, your stakeholders. So this is the icebreaker, and this is what we want you to do. We want you to take 5 minutes, talk to the people besides you, and have a discussion of which of these 3 topics do you want to learn more about. And then we'll do a little bit of hand raising in 5 minutes. All right? Go!
All right. Ice breaking is done. So we don't know, there was a lot of talking. We don't know if it was about these questions or if you're just happy to be out in real life again. But just to give us sort of a live poll on, raising your hand, what of these topics is the most challenging? What did you talk about? How many talked about product management coaching for me as a product manager? All right. 10-ish. Training for my team. How many? Okay. Anyone who are struggling with their management at all? Okay, some. Perfect. Yeah. So we are right now actually in discovery in ProductTleader.no to figure out what is it we need to help even further with. How can we sort of be even more sharp on what we offer. So we are definitely taking some of these signals with us back in. if there's people in here who's already on the community who wants to give us input on what is it to be a product manager and the reality of that, please just send us a message. We'll definitely like to understand our users even better and improve our products. All right, and now over to Lisa.
So first thing we have to check.
Thank you.
So the first thing we're checking is the microphone works. Yes? Yep. All right, grand. My name is Lisa Long. I'm one of the organizers for ProductTank. This is the other product management group in Oslo. We are by product people, for product people, and we have in-person events to actually teach people who are interested in product. So it's not just for product managers. A lot of our members are developers, designers, consultants, business. We're out there for everybody to learn about product. So we are very happy to actually partner with ProductLeder for this event and for Otovo for hosting us. So ProductTank itself is an organization which has over 180 meetups worldwide. So if you actually find yourself in London or Abu Dhabi or Dhaka, you can also attend a ProductTank there. This is all part of an organization called Mind the Product, which is based in London. And London has 4 conferences a year in London, Singapore, Hamburg, and San Francisco. So the next one will be in London in a couple weeks. That'll be the first live conference they've actually held since the pandemic. So they're very excited about getting that up and running. Unfortunately, all the tickets are sold out. So the next one you can make it to is Singapore, but that one's lovely as well. So for us to kind of continue on with tonight, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Andreas Thorsheim. He is the founder and CEO of Otovo. He started off in media back at Schibsted, and then he moved on to Opera and became the VP of product there. He founded Otovo back in 2016, and interesting fun fact, he actually spoke at the second ever ProductTank and told us about this idea he had about doing solar cells for the domestic market. And so we're very, very pleased about both where ProductTank has made it in the last 6 years, and we've been very impressed by actually what Otovo has accomplished in these times. So please give a warm welcome to our host, Andreas.
Tack. Är ni taggad? Mår ni bra? Okay. There's something wrong with the microphone. I think it's in Swedish. Oh. Okay. It's a bad joke, but I stole it from a very bad TV program. So I'm a bit nervous because this is the kind of new material for me, and now we're in constant fundraising mode, and it's the same deck every day, 40 times per week. So you get a bit sort of used to your own voice and being so into the routine that it's a bit. I'm a bit nervous actually with new material, but so hopefully you can be kind with me as I talk through this. So it's fun that I spoke at the ProductTank 5-6 years ago when this company was still a lie waiting to be a reality, which I think is half the job of creating a product, right? It's turning a vision, which if it doesn't work out is a lie, into a reality, right? And that can be a bit of a discomforting thought. And one of the things you do when you're in that situation is that you try and go to these things and you read books about other people who've built stuff. And when we were starting Otovo, Simen and Andreas and I, we were reading all the startup books, and we read 0 to 1. It's a terrible book with regards to investments in clean tech, because one of the major tenets there is that you cannot make money in green technology. Turned out to be very wrong. Or in our case, it's the jury's still out, I guess. But I think it's possible to make money in clean tech. But a good thing about that book is that its title is fantastic. It describes what you're doing as a creator of a product, of a startup, and that's bringing something that isn't into something that is. And to me, that's kind of the job of the creator. Before something scales up, it needs to originate. It needs to go from 0 to 1. But that means also that the job you have as a product developer in the beginning is to look at all these zeros on your roadmap, all this stuff that doesn't exist, and then decide what goes first. And I think that's job number 1 when you're making a company, when you're making a product for the first time, is to decide which order are you going to do these things in, right? So in the beginning, it's about ordering. It's about deciding what are we going to with on this first hour on the job, this first hour on the project. And then the decision is also to not do all the other things. Because if you don't decide that at the same time, you're kind of trying to do a lot of stuff, and that doesn't amount to really doing it, right? So you're going to be overwhelmed with all the stuff that you're trying to do rather than actually completing something. This is a lot harder than it appears, right? And I think we have a special attribute in Otovo. It's a special resource, and it's called Simen. And he sits over there, taking a photo now, actually. And he's our CPO, and he has this special power that comes in really handy in this situation, and that is his fantastic ability to accept things that stink, right? Because that is super important. It's like the acceptance of stinkage in your product is very important in the beginning. Because in the beginning it's nothing. That's the easiest time to raise money. So just raise money before you have a product, because then it can all be promises. Right after that, you maybe raised some money, you started building something, and then it's turning out that, well, this thing has a long way to go, right? And in our case, it was about, okay, we want to build a company that can do the following things. It can sell solar panels online with the avoidance of a home visit. That's a hard thing to do. Second promise, it can organize installers and have them compete for jobs on the platform. That's a hard thing to do. Once the projects that we've sold online and have installed with the workmen that are on the platform get completed, you can follow the production in an app that shows you how much energy you make, how much energy you sell back to the grid, what your savings are, and lots of other nice things that you would want to know when you're a kind of solar farmer. Fourth, this product is going to organize the selling of this energy back to the grid. We can become a grid company. We want to do that. And fifth, we are going to help you overcome the challenge of the 100,000 kroner 10,000 euro bill that this entails by making it a product that we sell as a service. So we're going to take the cost on our balance sheet and sell this to you, right? Could we deliver all of that on day one? No. We could say we were delivering it, which is halfway there, and then we had to make those lies truths. But we couldn't have our developer team that consisted of first Simen and a guy called Andreas. They could not, of course, make all those 5 things at once. So we're making what first? The front end, the thing that is presented to the consumer, because you want to start at the end of the funnel where the marketing, the PR things attract consumers, can convert them to the next step, and then we'll figure out the installer part next in 2 weeks when those installations start coming due. So at that stage, it's all about, okay, we're going to make the front end work decent, and then we're going to accept that for the installers, this isn't working, the app doesn't exist, it's all stink. The rest is all stink, and that is a lot smarter than trying to do all of those a little bit, because then no consumers will come through because they don't get convinced. No installers will install because things aren't working. You need to do one thing good enough first. Then you get to the sort of next type of problem, is that once you've worked through stage 1, you get the first thing working, and then you get the second thing working decent, and those stinkers become less stinky. They work, they're okay, right? Some of them you're thinking, yes, this is good. Well, then you're gonna start having the problem of a product organization that is working at, I'm not gonna say 2 speeds, but they're gonna be like a bit like system 1 and system 2 in your brain. Sort of one that's about, in a product parallel, it's about some things you do that are creation, making still something out of nothing, where there's, since this product doesn't exist, consumer research, forms, figuring out things, doing a lot of work before you sort of launch maybe might not be so interesting, because it's it's the first time it's getting built. Let's get feedback on something that exists, right? So that's more the creative part. And that means you're just going to take your golf club and hit the ball somewhere and see, okay, where do we go from there? But then you're going to have other things that have existed for a while where there are actually data. Your Google Analytics tell you that this is where the consumers are dropping off. Your consumers are calling on the phone saying, I don't understand this part of the product. And then you're getting feedback. And then that's a different job to address that than creating something fresh, something new. And quite inevitably, this is going to create a system inside your company or your team where you're kind of working on two tracks, the original creation and the iteration. Right? And that is increasingly difficult to do because if you focus too much on the iteration, well, it's going to stunt your growth probably, right? It's all about doing 10% improvements, 2% improvements, 1% improvements. How likely is it that you're going to have room for people who can do 3x things, for ideas that are going to disrupt the status that much? If you're only going for that type of bets, it's going to be lots of half-baked bets, right? That it's impossible to hit the perfect product on the first MVP version of it. So if it's all about those sort of swinging for the fences, big bets, that's also never going to consolidate into something solid. You can build very tall, but not solid, and it gets knocked over first gust of wind, right? That's sort of the other approach. So this is hard to combine. I think it's a major challenge when you're going from the first days of creation through early scaling, right? Add to that you're going to have to change a bit the culture of acceptance of stink, if I can get to the next slide. Okay, but that also means you need to stop sort of liking your stink that much, right? And I was thinking of that when I was in, I guess we were 2 years into the journey. We were interviewing for our first general manager outside of Scandinavia, was GM of Spain. And we'd had just enough success in the Nordics for good people to want to join the company when we were setting up our solar shop in Spain. And we had these great candidates come in, right? And they were from the electric scooters platforms. They were from taxi platforms. They came from all sorts of great companies. And I had this guy in front of me he had been GM for a bookstore turned everything store company. And he was sitting in front of me, and I thought, this is a great candidate, and I'm definitely not going to hire him. And I was thinking, why? What's wrong with this guy, right? Or what's wrong with me? Because it's either or. But I'm definitely not going to hire this great guy. And I was thinking, well, the reason is that this is a guy who can improve a business 10%. And we're not there. We are still in a stage where we need sort of 0 to 1 guys, people who can get the printer on the first day, who can just go for it without data, without knowing. That's the sort of person we need now. Right? I think in the years ahead, I'm going to hire people more like the 10% guy, right? Maybe not yet, but as things move on, this sort of jungle logistics person is not what we need. I need someone who can get the trains to run on time, more profile, right? It's going to be a different type of person. So I think your acceptance of stink needs to go down over time, but that's also sort of a philosophical question inside the company. You're going to have a change where the creative part that is 0 to 1 is going to happen less often, and less of the hours is going to be about that, and more is going to be about making informed product choice that where it's data from the product, qualitative data from consumers, analysis of your competitors. Those things are going to be more important than the sort of in day one invention. Last slide, I promise. I think, and this is a bit the stage we're at now, right? We're looking for 100% people who can who can think ahead a year and look at a company that's twice as big, who can look at twice as many projects coming through the business, right? They don't need to be the 0 to 1 guys, but they still need to be 2x people. This is a hard stage to be in, right? Because the longer we can keep that going, that really is sort of what determines whether you become a unicorn or not. This is what makes sort of a decent company great. If you can keep going at that. Growing very fast when you're small, that's easy. Growing very fast when you're mid-sized and then eventually big, that's super, super difficult. And we're having discussions on this in Otovo now, right? How should our organization evolve over the next year? We're 250 people now. We want to grow 100% next year, 100% the year after. Hopefully we're not going to grow our people 200%, right? That sounds like a bad idea for a loss-making company. You need to sort of scale your people a little bit less than your sales, hopefully, right? So we're thinking, how is this gonna happen, right? Which type of people do we bring in? How do we organize them? Which kind of structures do we create around meetings, about documentation, about routines? How do you do all that without that turning into boring and sounding like a focus on the 10% things when we still want the 100% things? Super difficult question that we're going to face every day for the next 2 years. What can I say about that? Well, a bit like when I was on the first ProductTank 5 years ago, or second ProductTank 5 years ago, I was talking about things I didn't know anything about. Back then it was creating a solar company. Now I know a whole lot about that, but I don't know so much about the next stage. But I can say a few things that I think are going to be true. And I'm going to say one thing that I think is going to be true about that. And that is you need to stay in the mode where the most important thing for the product people is the ability to imagine something that isn't. Whether it's the product that doesn't exist, or the organization that doesn't exist, or the heaps of customers or installers that are going to be on the platform that don't exist. That's going to be the key thing that determines whether we can keep going, keep handling the complexity that's come in, keep eliminating stink while you still keep the creative juices flowing so you can make new things out of nothing. Thank you very much. All right, Q&A, yes?
Solar panels that you have.
Yes.
How do you convince your customers or to the market? This is important where you don't have a sun in Norway.
Yes. Okay. It's a very difficult question. I think maybe one that shaped us. So the question is, how do we convince our customers to buy solar panels from Otovo when, as you can see, this isn't exactly the Canary Islands, right? So how do you do that? Well, first of all, advice, if you're starting a solar company, don't do it here because it's the worst place on earth. Labor is expensive, electricity prices are super low, and the sun doesn't shine half the year. So I guess you can do better in terms of where you want to start your solar company. But the good thing about it is that, well, sometimes when people grow up in hard places, they become really tough, right? And I think this was part of the allure to us about starting in Scandinavia was that the present in 2016 to us was the future to the rest of our competitors in Europe. Because what's great in Oslo and Norway is that we're far into the journey of electrifications. And so people don't use gas. They don't in their heating. They're increasingly using electric cars for their driving. The energy that is here is already quite renewable. People are super digitized. And I think that's the case. I see a lot of people from other organizations that probably benefit from being in a Norwegian environment that is sort of already a bit in the future for the rest of Europe, right? I don't want to say that to sort of sound, I don't know, sort of nationalistic, but I think that some of the bad gets countered by some good stuff that exists here that doesn't exist other places. And that kind of forced us to be disciplined in what got automated. So that's why we were the first in Europe to create the online experience where people would have the house they live in analyzed by software. That created the layout for the panels on their roof by software. That saved a lot of journeys with expensive labor. It meant that you could pay less for the solar panels than you would if it was all manual. And those things were necessary to bring down the cost of installing a handyman product with Asian imported hardware in a place where the sun doesn't shine all the time. So I think that forced us to be disciplined, and it forced us to sort of be efficient and automated really early on. And that allowed us to answer one of the big questions that customers are looking at when they're looking to be convinced is, am I going to save money? Can I trust you? Can I trust the installer? Can I trust the equipment? And is this going to be a lot of hassle? So I think the mix between the importance of those three things, affordability and savings, trust, and the ease of installation, ease of use of the product, are going to vary a bit from country to country. Obviously in Norway it's a lot about the savings because the trust is so strong in this society, and people expect things to be easy because we have Vips and Finn and lots of products that people think everything should be online and work this smooth. So it's all about the cost, and I think for us it was bringing the cost down so you could reliably say, look, at this technology is just saving a lot of cost, and we can make solar energy cheaper than hydro energy even up here. So it's a long-winded question, but I guess that was kind of the job we did. Yeah. Question?
I have a question back to that, the scaling of your business or just your team. Have you thought about, or like, it's fine if you don't have to answer it, but because I do see different speeds and like vision or 1 to 0 or like 0 to 1 or like 10% increments in different teams? As in, like, are you thinking about organizing that way, or is it just?
No, I don't think so. I think it's. Would you want to be on the slow team? I don't know. I think it's probably don't want to sort of organize sort of. That's why I didn't have the brain team and the list team, because I don't think that's how things work. You need to be in the product to discover the next invention. But I think you want a mix of people in the teams where some people cannot tolerate imperfections. Yes. They want to work on they go home and they're like, we let some people down today. I can't tolerate that stink, right? You need to mix those guys in because they can't all be Simen thinking, yeah, fuck them. There's going to be more people tomorrow, and if we don't build, but it's like he lives in the future, right? And that's a super, especially early on, that's super important, right? Because it's like, yeah, we let 2 guys down today. Are we going to build a product perfect for the 2 guys coming in tomorrow, or are we going to think about how we bring 200 people in and not let those guys down, right? So I think it's about having the right mix in the different teams, and so I think we're organizing by topic, and then it's more about giving signals as management, as product managers, as engineering managers about what are we looking for now, right? Which phase are we in now? So now we've been in an expansive phase with a platform team, for example. We've made a lot of new things. We have new functionality that the installers need to absorb. We're getting a lot of feedback. Next quarter, next few sprints, we're going to focus on tidying up our mess, right? We sort of conquered some new land. Let's consolidate. That's the phase we're in now. Okay, next question.
I have a 2-part question for you. And the first one was, what was your strategy when you tried to expand outside of Norway? Like, how did you pick which country? And how did you think about pricing based on which country you picked?
Okay, so a country expansion strategies, we were super, super disciplined on the ordering of things, right? I think we were coming from sort of our thinking was like, we can only do one country at a time because we don't have bandwidth, we don't have capital to do them all at once. This product is harder to scale than a Spotify that you can make in one place and it works everywhere because it's going to be Beyonce everywhere, right? So we were like, we need to choose the place where growth is the least expensive for us, where we get the most uplift in sales, so we can prove in the next funding round that the money we had was well spent. So we made this super smart Excel sheet where we had all the countries on Earth, and we had 72 parameters about population, number of detached homes, semi-detached homes, owner occupancy rates, grid tariffs, electricity prices, number of households on 12 months fixed tariffs compared to spot tariffs, hours of sun, blah, blah, blah. Competitive landscape, installer ecosystem, super, super smart. And the first iteration it came out with, the best place to go for us was Sweden. Okay. Also because we're not that brave, so I guess that's sort of braveness adjustment, Sweden. Okay, so we went to Sweden. Second was, the system came out. It said France and Poland equal. Okay, we were like, Poland, we're not going there. Doesn't sound so sexy for investors. We're going to France. Turned out that was way early, still a very slow solar country. Then the third time around, the system came out. Poland first, Spain second. We were like, we're not going to Poland. The investors are going to hate us for it. We're going to Spain. Everyone knows Spain is great for sun. Let's go there. Went to Spain. Turned out the Polish market boomed, became the biggest country in Europe in solar. We're like, yeah, this model works. Let's not use that model anymore. So then we went to Poland without a model, and then Italy without a model, and then so there's not that much blank space left. So it's Germany now and UK next, right? I guess that's the only place there's left people in Europe, right? So it was very sophisticated and very stupid. And I think that's in general something that founders and product managers spend way too much time on. Super sophisticated models where it's like you can feel super smart in your Excel model and your whiteboard, and you can explain things really well. I'm not sure it matters that much. You just need to get out there, and it's more important to get, if you can get out 2 months before by not thinking so much, I'd rather do that, right? I'd rather be 2 months ahead in every country than spending time in that stupid model, right? And we had super sophisticated way of going into the countries also early on, and it turned out what you need is hire great GMs and they'll figure everything out. It doesn't matter, right? So I think we're a lot less sophisticated about it, maybe because the relative cost of going into new countries is a lot lower. Yeah, so that was how we went in. The second part of the question was,
what did you think about pricing when you tried to expand to the countries?
So we have a bidding platform. So when we go into a new country, the method is hire a great GM. So how do we do that? Use a great recruiter and put yourself out there. Try and be as charismatic as you can. Interview the great people who get on the list, choose the best one, have a couple of beers with them, fly them up here, get them excited about the product, and then it's like, you're on your own, get this thing built. And once they've done that, they're like, so what do I do next? Get installers on board. We're going to build a product for you. Rickard is going to do that. And then we're going to you just need to get installers on board. Why? Because we're selling their work. So Uber, pretty crap without drivers. We are also very crap without installers. So we bring the installers on board. We get national coverage, and then, because then we can just start spending on marketing. Prices are going to be very high, because the guys didn't trust us. They were like, I'm going to sell these things really expensive. If there's no cure, no pay. But if they can sell my installations really expensive, I'm going to make a lot of money. They feel really smart. 2 weeks later, we've done with national coverage. We get back and we're like, Milan, we only have one guy and he's really expensive. Let's get 4 more guys. And then you start getting more installers on board. They have to input their cost, the cost of their labor, their scaffolding, their driving. That's how our platform works. That's kind of their algorithmic bid on the platform. That means our costs go down. And hopefully they go down so much that we can sell solar panels cheaper than the electricity price in the country. That's the aim. And once we go beyond that, we start taking a price that drops less than the cost of the bids, allowing us to take more and more margin. So the better we can get the efficiency of the platform working, so that the installers learn from feedback from not winning bids, that they get eager to do more when they win, so they expand their capacity on low cost, etc. Those things help the cost come down. allows us to take a margin. So we're pricing towards the electricity price rather than the than something we decide ourselves, right? It's super organic, and for us, we price every day, and so it's not something we think a lot about. We're just looking. So if we can take more, we take more. That's super simple. Okay, last question before we need to move on to the. Yes. Okay, ladies first.
Going more back to that excitement about the product that you mentioned, how do you make sure that you maintain that throughout the organization when you expand quickly? Because I think a lot of companies fail at that. It's like you grow too fast and then people don't really feel connected anymore to the initial kind of excitement. Do you do anything actively to maintain that?
I think we try, and then it's like, it's a very hard question, a good question, very hard question, and it's inevitable that you get this sense of alienation as the product grows, as the company grows, right? And Rickard asked me to share some pictures from like 3 locations ago when we were in the workshop of one of the ad agencies in Oslo. That was where we set up shop the first time, and it was like a really cramped room with actually room for 4 people. At the end, we were 12 inside there. We're super cramped. And it was great until we became 10, because everyone knew everything, and you would hear the guys talking to customers at one end of the table, and the guys making the product would sit at the other end of the table. You talk to some installer at sort of the third end of the table. Like it would be, you didn't need any organization. You didn't need any structure, because everything was just like one brain of 10 people. And then we had our first conflicts when we got into 2 rooms, because then we started having the question like, I wasn't informed about this, but this decision was made 5 minutes ago. Everyone heard it except you, because you can't stand to be in the room with all the other guys. That's what you get for being an introvert, right? They're like, yeah, but seriously, I'm a programmer. I can't sit in there, like so noisy. And it's like, yeah, okay, maybe we need to have some meetings where we're like, this is important. Once a week we have a meeting. Like, oh, I don't like meetings. It's like, okay. And then that was sort of first problem, right? When like the Big Bang, all the atoms were in one place, and then 10 seconds later they were very far apart, and that was sort of the first feeling of alienation, I think, when we started to be in 2 rooms with 2 groups, the noisy guys and the non-noisy guys, right? And how do you make those work? And then quite predictably, we moved down here to the building next door, Torgata 5, and we got to, I don't know, 20, 30 people, and predictably communication broke down again, because we sort of needed to introduce a more organized form of middle management. We would have meetings that not everyone would attend for the first time. You'd have ops meetings and sales meetings and product meetings. And I'm saying all this because at quite predictable intervals that are at 10 people, 40 people, 200 people, you get these sort of breakdowns, because the way the human tribe system works is that, well, at those points you have breakage. How do you maintain excitement? Well, you have the choice to stay at that number. I think for some products that could be a good idea. So if your ideal setup is 17, maybe consider being 12 instead. Or then, so consider that first. Second, some people will be ideal when you're 10, and then they will feel, I can't take this. We have 4 meetings per week. I can't stand the pressure. There's so much stuff so much time where I'm not working on product. I can't be in all these meetings 5% of my time. I can't deal with it, okay? Then it's fine that those guys maybe want to work somewhere else. And then I think you need to start creating the structures, the fibers of the company, where I think culture is something you really can will into existence. And we've had to sort of fuel that on occasions with creating something we call the Otovo Jams, where we would have talks like this with external people coming in. That was helping sort of people to understand the meta journey of being in a startup. You would have, okay, Fridays after 2, not much gets done here. But we help the the sales numbers of Ringnes and Hansa. So I think you just want to mix those things in so that every part of the journey is fun, but you can't have every part of the journey be exactly as the previous part of the journey. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, I think we need to move on to the next part, where we're having a bit of a panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Andreas, for the intro. I'm going to go ahead and give a quick introduction for each one of our panelists, and then we're going to spend about 20 minutes answering some questions, and then we'll open up the floor to any questions that you actually have for our fabulous panel of experts. So the first on my right is Jeanine Lilleng. She's a computer scientist, graduated from NTNU. She was a VP at Telenor and worked on the payments team there. And then she went on to be the CTO, COO of MazeMap. And now she's actually working as a principal product manager at Microsoft. We also have Ian Stendora from Ardoc. So he started off on the economics and business side at BI, and then he became the Ardoc VP of product and has actually been working with that company as it's actually gone through its own scaling journey. And lastly, we have Simen from Otovo. He also is NTNU Comp Sci, and he started off as a consultant at Tieto. And he co-founded Iterate, which is one of the consulting companies here in Norway, and also is one of the founders of Otovo. Now, here's the fun fact, which connects this panel, is the fact that Jeanine was the teaching assistant for Simen's computer class. So clearly, Jeanine has the future of Norway in her hands. So to get started, so one of the first questions that I think a lot of people have when it comes to their product is, when do you know your product is really ready to scale? So Ian, we're going to start with you since you have the Ardoc journey to refer to. So tell us a little bit about that.
It's very freezent, as they say. Thinking about scaling or when do you feel like you actually have product market fit, I think one of the things that I was most frustrated about in reading all the books that got mentioned today is a lot of the times when they're written, especially from product perspective, they talk about product and what product can do to get product market fit. They forget that second word, which is the market. And for us, it was really about seeing predictable, repeatable, standardized or relatively standardized sales. Actually hitting goals every quarter, actually seeing and predicting how it's going to perform. That was a huge trigger to know that, okay, we actually have the market part. On the product side, of course, trying to keep a good pulse on things like churn and engagement and usage was a huge aspect, and to validate that, okay, it actually is solving a need. Can we actually get public references? Those kind of the basic things, which are really, really hard when you're selling IT solutions to IT people. They don't like to talk about it and put their job on the line. But that was for us like the kind of triggers, those two big things. I mean, I don't know how long it took before. Well, I do know. It took about 6 years to get to that point where I actually felt like we started feeling what scalability felt like. So yeah, that would be my short answer.
Okay, so one of the things we really have to keep in mind is the market part of the
market
fit.
Yes.
So Simen, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think Andreas spoke about the idea of selling solar in Norway. And I guess that secret sign means I should keep it closer.
Eat the microphone, yes please.
And as he said, everyone said it was a really bad idea. So he came to me with this idea early on, and the timing was right. So I decided to join Andreas in co-founding Otovo. And then I started telling people that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell solar panels in Norway, and everyone said yes. Horrible idea. Worst idea. There's no sun and electricity price. Electricity is free in Norway, didn't you know? And so I decided to join, but we wanted to do it kind of in reverse. So I wanted to kind of see proof that this could work and would work before we started properly doing anything. And that's what we did, and we put up this super simple unbound landing page, just registering people, put out some Google ads. The very first customer who came in, we went on a visit, we drove to her house, I made a contract kind of on the go before we went out. And far from what the experts said, there's no market for this. She was super excited, she'd been waiting for this. And she signed the deal. We had to invent a price as we went there. She signed the deal in the kitchen, right then and there. And that's kind of the story of how it started, because Andreas got us some good PR, like in, week 2. and the leads were coming in and the sales were coming in. And of course, we didn't have any product or any system. But still, like, okay, there's a market here. There's a real pull from customers for what we have. So maybe it's unconventional to say that we had product market fit from the start. But I think we did it in the reverse, and I'm happy about the way we kind of attack this.
Great. So actually doing some things that perhaps don't scale in the beginning to actually really get an understanding of what that product, the market might be, even if the data shows otherwise. Cool. All right. So Ian, when it came to the resources and the competences you needed in the early stage of where Arctic was going versus what you actually needed when you actually had to scale, what was the difference in what you did and what you needed in order to actually build the product?
I have one of my early ones in the audience laughing. Yeah, no, it's very different. So in the beginning, a lot of generalists, or as Norwegians call it, potatoes, that go with everything, was a huge factor. We really looked for people that had an amazing amount of grit and grind and willingness to just trudge through the worst things to try to do those 0 to 1 efforts. And that went for a lot of things. I mean, even on our product side, we had people trying to do design and product management and all the things at the same time. So really, grit was a big thing in the beginning. Now, of course, grit is still important now as we're scaling, but we're starting to find specialists more, people that can add a lot more professionalism. And you know, as Andreas said earlier, with the 10%ers, they do matter and they have a huge impact, especially when you're trying to professionalize things like communication lines and the basics. The generalists start to fall off at that stage, right? They want to have those new problems, those new things. So for us, a real difference was going from finding really capable, intelligent people that just wanted to solve problems to finding people that had really specific skill sets that would really take us to the next step. I think that was the biggest difference that we're feeling right now.
So actually talking about some of those specific skill sets, how do product and sales change their relationship as you actually transition in that scaling?
Yeah. So we were lucky not to have like an unwieldy sales force that was out there just promising the world. We were probably on the side of too humble and too protective and conservative in our market. But the real transition went from kind of going out and just trying to explore advisory sales that took a long time and doing so at really low prices, to actually the product team leading the sales team to tell them more about what are really the core problems to the users and what are solutions instead of selling features. That was the biggest change. So feature selling sucks. If anybody's worked in sales before, just so you know, your salespeople are doing a really hard job when they're selling features. By giving them the solutions and real clarity into the outcomes the users are trying to achieve makes their life so much easier. And that really was when we broke through in just selling, non-predictable sales that were kind of ad hoc, haphazardly priced to predictable, repeatable sales. So I think the big thing was a shift in how you look at the whole process, but that product actually led the solution discovery.
Okay, so it's important to actually make sure your sales process reflects what your product really has on offer.
Right, and what they know. What we've learned about our users. Yeah.
So Jeanine, I think you actually have some stories from this.
Well, I don't know where you found your salespeople, but those are not the same salespeople as I had. So I seem to end up in these situations where we have amazing salespeople that can sell anything, but they tend to sell what we don't have. And that can be a challenge because what happens the next day is basically they're coming back to the office and they're telling you, oh, by the way, we sold this thing. And you're telling them, well, we don't have that. And it's like, well, it's good you're the CTO, so fix it, please. So I think what I've seen when you're getting towards the point where you're doing scale, then I've been in a lot of tough discussions with the sales organization on having to change their approach. Because at the end of the day, if they keep selling things you don't have, you're not going to be able to actually get that out to the customers, and at the end of the day it gives you a bad reputation. So it's like, and I've had this discussion at least twice in 2 different scale ups, and I guess the only thing that's common with those 2 situations are me, so I'm not quite sure if this is only my problem, but at least I tend to have that problem.
So actually, let's talk a little bit more about the tech side of product then. So how can actually product work with the tech side to actually make sure that we're balancing things as the product scales with the tech debt that tends to be incurred at the beginning of product development where, I guess several times that Andreas mentioned that Simon's like, just make it work. It's ugly, but it's fine. So what's been your experience, Jeanine, in actually helping balance these equations between the tech debt and the new work?
Well, I'm actually surprised at the stink part, because what I've very often seen, not only the places I have been working, but other places as well, especially if you have a CEO and or product that doesn't understand tech so well, you'll end up in situations where tech tend to redecide on the tech stack every couple of years. So there's like this thing where you use one tech for the scale-up phase, and then all of a sudden you need to do another tech. I might know that it's just that the other one that's much cooler than the previous one. So there are situations where it makes sense to do something about your tech stack, because you can't do perfect. Because if you do perfect, you never get sales and you never end up doing anything. But getting that right balance and having the real discussions about what needs to happen, and almost never throw away anything, but do incremental improvements, yeah, I think that will get you there quicker.
So actually, let's turn this to a little bit on the hiring side. So Ian, can you tell us something about building out the product teams for Ardoc?
Yeah, it's actually something I think that's really relevant now. We're just now kind of meeting a critical mass, I would say. We had a very engineering-focused organization from early on, 2 engineering founders, and then myself as the first non-engineer to join the team. And it's been really kind of an imbalance where we've had huge engineering teams and virtually no product teams for a long time. Luckily, we learned that lesson early enough to start investing, but basically the big difference was, going from taking people out of engineering or other roles like architects and making them product managers and saying, go figure it out and learn on the job, to now, respecting the profession and finding people that actually are product managers. And I think that's probably something I wish we had done earlier. I know somebody has advocated that from day one almost, who's sitting in the audience. But that's something that I think was really transformative in that journey and recently in the last year and a half or 2 years. The other thing that I was surprised about is we actually really invested a lot in design before we had a lot of product managers. So that balance, I think, was a bit off as well. We had great designers, but not really any guidance. So yeah, it's been a learning lesson on what is the right operating ratio and how do we organize. But I still don't think we've totally cracked that, not to be fully honest.
Okay. So Simen, it's been some of your experience on recruiting and building out the teams in the last few years as things have changed.
Yeah, I think when it comes to recruiting, I think in the beginning, it's like what you said. You tend to have a lot of generalists, and you have a lot of hats. So I've been a marketing manager, a sales manager, a sales agent, a partnership manager. That wasn't that long ago, actually. And I had this advice early on that you need to keep firing yourself. I think I read it on Twitter. But it was really good advice. And it's hard to let all of these kind of hats go as you get more good people. But in the end, you're getting people who are more skilled at what you were doing kind of half-assed, and then and you're improving, right? So I think that's important.
Okay, so let's actually take this back now more to the actual product development of your product over time. So how did you actually do some of the balance between the short and long term in terms of what you actually need to build for that customer tomorrow and that customer you actually were going to have in 10 days, or 100 days, or 2 years?
Yeah, on our side, we always kind of let the customers in first.
Mm-hmm.
And then we built what we needed to build. So as I said, we opened the door, we had nothing, like just an unbound site. And then, as Andreas said, we built a nice tool where customers could check their own roof eventually after a few months. And then we started to get some sales, and then we built out the kind of project flow, how to give them the tools to the project, to the installers, and so forth. So we always kind of let in the customers, and as they kind of progressed, we switched out our spreadsheets and kind of poor tools with proper tools, and we built what we needed. And then we tried to have this kind of vision that's not too far out. So I don't believe at all in kind of future-proofing. But maybe a year out, maybe 18 months, but no more. We know what kind of direction we're heading into. So that's kind of giving the direction for the product work. But we're always kind of just creating problems for ourselves by letting customers in and then solving them.
Okay.
That's what we do.
All right, so kind of more of a just-in-time rapid response. Jeanine, I think your experience has been more with enterprise systems. So can you tell us a little bit more about the expectations there and how you actually balance that short-term and long-term product development?
Yeah, so I'm normally talking a lot about, well, we don't really talk that much about stink, but I guess it's sort of about the same thing. There's like only so much nastiness that the customers will you can get away with. So actually closing those off, getting rid of the worst errors, making sure that the majority of the experience is nice enough has been very important. And then what you have to do is you also have to understand where you want to go, what are the future problems you're going to solve, and how are you going to make sure that you stay relevant. So it's, I think, and I guess that's also part of the difference between doing like software development and doing like the kind of things that Otovo is doing. You sort of need to be a bit further ahead because it's like, I can't fake the queries. I can't have people sitting on the phone line actually answering the queries, hitting the system. So to a certain extent, my experience is that we have to be further along. But it's always a balance, and there's always discussions. And I thought it was a bit funny what we heard earlier, because you always have the one person in the team that keep nagging about like, we need to fix that, we need to fix that, we need to fix that. And then you always have these other people in the team talking about like what we'll do in 2 years. And the one thing nobody have talked about today that for me has been very important, it's about impact. So if I'm doing this change, how will that impact the overall product? How will it impact the new customers? How will it impact the old customers? So like, I think one of those I think about a lot when we're doing planning for product is like, okay, we can do this change, but what will the impact be? Is it getting us where we need to be?
So actually talking about impact of like the different kinds of changes, Ian, if you can tell us a little bit, like what was the difference between the kinds of changes that product made in the early stage of RDoC to actually respond to customers versus later in the stage? So it's kind of around the idea of the relationship our product had kind of with the customers and how that changed when you started scaling and you started having many customers who were asking for things rather than just kind of the few that you were looking at.
Yeah. Okay. So in the beginning, we did a lot tighter work with our clients, especially the bigger ones, on kind of prioritization of a roadmap. So we had a strong technical founders that had a good product vision. So we weren't really letting them put things on our roadmap, but they were often prioritizing what we wanted to invest. So that helped us a lot in kind of, prioritizing things and moving quickly and getting kind of big features out to market, trying to find this idea of like enterprise ready or feature complete. Now we have this like fire hose of customer feedback. I mean, I think the last time I checked this morning, our product portal has something like 1,700 inputs that need to be categorized and looped back. And so what we're really struggling with now is trying to find that balance of like, okay, how do we still listen to our customers, yet don't just, turn it into a ticket managing system, right? It's not support tickets. These are product feedback inputs. And so that's been a real change. And I think one of the things now we're realizing is this pain of kind of product operations and managing this whole process, but then also giving our product managers enough time to do better research and discovery, which is something we never had really before formalized. It was more natural, right? Like it just happened through sales processes because you're in a prototyping phase where you build trust and a relationship with the users, right? Now it's like an official process. Like we need to do better research, period. And that transition is painful and very, very challenging because we're dealing with, millions and millions of dollars and not just, I think at the time we had like $1,000 when I joined. So big difference. Big difference.
Grand. So Jeanine, I think you also have some experience with this idea of altering priorities over time.
Well, I guess what I want to talk a bit about expectation management, because I guess that's one of the big problems that hits, because when you have the new customers, like the early customers, early adapters, they are the heroes of any startup company, whatever they say goes. And then you get to the point where, oh, you have more than one customer. I'm not getting everything I want anymore. And making sure you don't lose the customers in that process and making sure they still feel like part of a community, that can be a bit of struggle.
So yeah, Simen, I think you have some experience with that as well, from getting from that first kitchen table where you got the contract signed to now you're supporting, thousands of people out there.
Yeah, I think our journey has been a little bit different. Of course, we have end customers and they're buying solar panels. And actually, it's been a real challenge getting good customer insights because it kind of has to be in this buying moment. When they bought, it's too late. They're kind of justifying what they did. But what we always had, and what I think kind of changed over the years, is our relationship with the rest of the organization. And we were all kind of in one room, as Andreas said, and it's always been super easy to do changes. Someone wants something different. We have a developer. You can do that, and it's done. And what we're seeing now is that, with the requesters are not our customers. They're the markets, right? The GMs and their organizations out around in Europe. And what we're seeing is that we're supporting 7 or 8 different markets in different setups and in different environments. And what's happening? We have this onboarding page. So when customers buy, they're supposed to upload some pictures and some documents, and to make everything easier for them and for us. And we kept changing. Oh, France wants this thing, and someone would go and do it. And then in Spain they need this other document. And I was just checking now just to tell this story, because someone made a matrix of all the countries and all the kind of requirements, and it's like an 8x36 matrix, and it becomes completely unmanageable. And we had someone like almost not dedicated, but by just the force of nature to kind of deal with this all the time. But then the skill we learned was configuration. So we just we managed to put this in the proper system, and we could just give it out to the general managers or the people in the markets, and they could go off and do it themselves. And it sounds so easy, but it was a bit of a process to kind of let this go and let the kind of setup into the hands of the organizations out there. But it makes a lot of sense.
Configuration is definitely one of the most wonderful tricks in the world of software to make everybody feel like it's custom. All right, so this is the last question I'm going to ask you as a panel, and then we'll open it up for your questions. So what's the one piece of advice you wish you could have given yourself when you started your product scaling journey? So go ahead.
Yeah, I think the one piece of advice I would kind of go back and give myself would be to try to start only one business. That also seems kind of obvious, but I think when you're scaling and you're getting lots of customers and you're seeing all this stuff going on, you're talking to a lot of customers, and you get all these ideas, and then they're good ideas, right? Someone should turn them into a business. And then we tried a couple of times. So we made we're selling solar panels, so we should also sell electricity. So we built that company. It's true. It's I guess quite a few here might have been customers of Nabostrøm at one point. But it turned out it's a completely separate business. And the same, we also, we were kind of looking at the whole journey. So we really wanted to monitor the production of every customer's solar panels. And to do that kind of in a perfect way, we would need hardware. So we also had a hardware startup. It's actually this little box. This and the next version, I think we ended up producing some 1,500 of them, and I think we have like 300 or 400 still out in the field, still working every day. But it also turned out that's also a separate business. So we had to kind of close them both down, just to kind of regain focus and make sure we're kind of succeeding on the things we started. Yeah. And that would save some time and money to kind of go back and give ourselves that advice. That's my.
All right, Ian, so which piece of advice do you wish you would have given yourself at the beginning of your journey?
I think we also could have benefited from focus. We built a crazy amount of stuff. I think with a little earlier injection into product management and keeping all of our engineers focused on real outcomes, I think we would have a lot less technical debt. I think we would also have probably less paper cuts and better user experiences. But those are all kind of laughable. I think the most important thing really though is we would better understand the market fit. We built a crazy big platform that can do a lot of very powerful things for very complex problems, but selling a platform is a horribly challenging task. And understanding really the customer's pains and their value propositions that really speak to them helps so much in that scalability phase. And really, everybody thinks it comes from marketing and sales. I come now to believe that's not true. If that is the case, then you end up in a situation like you described. So really having that strong product culture earlier on to keep focused and really get to the root problems, I think would have saved us a lot of time and money and probably even better results. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Jeanine, with your long experience, what would you advise?
Well, I'll stick to tech then. So there's this one thing that a lot of CTOs and that a lot of tech people tend to do wrong. And that's about you have really high hopes and really high expectations, and then you go build this platform for this enormous system with millions and millions of users. It is really, really expensive. It takes forever, and it's not needed. What you need to do is that you need to know, what do I need now? What is my plan for the next step? How long will it take me? And when do I start on that part of the journey? That would have saved so many money for Telenor at one point in time. And I think it would also save a lot of startups, a lot of lost capital in early phases. The fact that you plan to be big doesn't mean it has to scale for 1,000 transactions per second from day one.
Great. That's very, very sensible advice that I too wish I had followed. Okay, at this point in time, is there anybody who actually has any questions for our panelists? Bojana?
I have a question about theory for product scaling. Thinking about theory for product scaling, or like any book or any best practice, did you find something that you were always going back to, like when you were like working with different products, or it was always a situation where you had to kind of figure out situation for yourself on how to scale a product for that specific product that you were building?
So the question is whether or not, what resources you kept going back to time and time again as you actually were scaling your product.
Oh man. Yeah, I have a really love-hate relationship with blogs and books. Read them all and followed some of them. I think technically, on technical scaling, we were benefited by having engineers that did what she described and really built a scalable platform from day one, and that we've kind of lived off for a long time. From the product scaling aspect of it, I don't know. I mean, there's a couple really good resources that I keep going back to around the SVG or SVPG. What is it?
Silicon Valley Product Group, SVPG.
I mean, if I was going to send a new PM into my team, one place for anything, I think I would send them there. But I think if you're going to go on theory or methodologies, or if you're going to learn one thing really well, I would say really tone or fine-tune your discovery skills, your research skills, and understanding that problem. Because if a product manager can do one thing well, and that is really understand and articulate the problem, luckily, usually that makes everybody's life around you much easier. Sales can sell better, marketing can market better, and engineers have a much easier time of taking over the handover instead of just saying, why am I building this thing all the time? Because the why is often the biggest question.
So aside from Silicon Valley Product Group, is there another set of resources you would recommend?
I don't know about resources or methodologies. I mean, there's a lot of methodologies around discovery and good discovery work. I can't think of one with the name on the top of my list. But yeah.
I guess from a totally different perspective, but I think the book I've read the most while working at Otovo is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Okay. I know you have a list of resources, Jeanine.
I don't really have. So I guess my favorite book is going to tell you a lot about my background from technical. And it's actually a book on risk management, and it's called Dancing with Bears. I think I have no idea what the author is. And the thing about that is that I read it at a point in time where I was still very much primarily an engineer. And what it got me is starting thinking about like all of the things that can go wrong and trying to avoid them. And that is especially if you're in a scaling team, it's a very good start into product management and just understanding what's going on, because it gets you from just thinking about what am I building or like how do I make this work to actually figuring out like what will probably go wrong and how will I make that not a complete disaster.
Okay. Okay.
One book for working with engineers, The Build Trap would be the book. So
that's Melissa Perry, The Build Trap. All right. Any other questions for our panel?
Yeah. For Simen, if you don't mind, you said you built a couple of businesses. next to your startup. Do you think there would have been a better phase to build those businesses, or not at all?
So the question is whether or not there is a better phase to actually build businesses that would be along the same lines of the business that you're building at that time. Is that correct? All right.
Yeah, I think if you kind of made it, if you have a business that is profitable and makes a lot of money and is kind of there, sure, you can kind of go ahead and do these things, right? But before you're there, it's a diversion, right, of resources, of time, and yeah, it's just it's very difficult to succeed with one business. Two is impossible. It's, at least at the same time.
Okay. Last question. Okay.
One more question for Jeanine. Considering that your background is also from Telenor and Microsoft, do you find it very different to build and scale products within an established organization versus startups?
So the question is whether or not it's different to actually build products in an established organization like Microsoft or Telenor versus in startup companies that you've worked in.
I've had a lot of discussions with people over the years around like, well, you'd rather work in like large organizations or in small startups. But I have to say that in reality, I think in these large organizations, it's more about where you are and who your manager is. So I've never had as much fun and as much freedom and as a big playing pan as I had in Telenor, where I had like an awesome boss that basically covered me from everything, shielded me from all shit, and I could just like go my happy ways and build digital payments. And that was great. And I did have even less freedom but even like in the startup where I worked afterwards, we had a lot less freedom than I had in that situation in Telenor, because if you get the right boss and you're in a large company and they have a lot of money, that is an awesome combination. You rarely ever get there in a startup, at least not in the beginning. And then in Microsoft, it's a much more professionalized setting than it was in Telenor, because Telenor at the point really didn't know what they were doing around product. Lisa started later. Yeah, so I don't think it's so much about large or small company. I think it's more about choosing your boss and what your boss is trying to do. And yeah, so I think it's always been different.
Cool, thanks. All right, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much to the panelists for spending time with us this evening. And thank you to Otovo, our hosts. At this point in time, well, yeah.
Yes, thank you to all of you, our panelists, our icebreakers, to Andreas. We are a solar company, so it's very tempting to stay on topics. We have some sunflowers for all of you. Thank you to everyone that came. Very fun to see all of you here. If you want to stick around, there's more beers. We will be here at least until 8. And yeah, have a good rest of your evening. Thank you for coming.